2C-C is a psychedelic phenethylamine that's been used since at least the 1990s. Although it's been available from research chemical companies, it's never become especially popular. It's not as popular as 2C-B, but the majority of users find it has desirable effects. One of the primary complaints levied against the drug is that it can be underwhelming, primarily with its mental activity. With any drug, especially hallucinogens, the most I can do is provide an outline of the typical effects. Your experience is not going to perfectly match what I say. If I mention something usually doesn't cause anxiety, for example, that doesn't mean panic or anxiety responses are impossible. What the drug provides is always going to depend on a variety of factors, including your psychology, dose, and setting. The positive effects can include open and closed eye visuals, relaxation, insightful thinking, increased care for others, stimulation, euphoria, music enhancement, and auditory hallucinations. The negative effects include confusion, anxiety, nausea, increased heart rate and blood pressure, impaired coordination, and tension. 2C-C is typically viewed as a recreational, relaxing, and easier psychedelic. Neither its physical or mental effects are difficult at common doses. People come away viewing the drug as one of two things. One view is that it's a pleasant, recreational, and sometimes introspective or entactogenic psychedelic. The other is that it's boring and not worth it. It's rare for someone to have a really negative or harsh view of the drug, since it's uncommon for the drug to deliver a negative or harsh experience. It's one of, if not the most, relaxing member of the 2CX series. The relaxing component can include sedation, and users have reported feeling like they could fall asleep. Others find it's neutral or stimulating in terms of energy, but still relaxing with its bodily and mental effects. Words like tranquil and comfortable have been applied to the experience, and titles like psychedelic Valium and psychedelic opium sometimes appear. The point of these descriptions is that you can feel comfortable laying down or sitting. It doesn't feel like a stimulant, separating it from most members of the 2CX series, DOX series, and LSD. But if you want to get up and move around, that's usually possible. The onset and come up are the main periods that may differ from this description. People start to notice a buzz and a sense of alteredness that's accompanied by a slight change in perception and bodily sensations. This is sometimes compared to MDMA's come up or to the buzz offered by alcohol. Users can also experience nausea and rarely vomiting. Both are less common than with 2CB and a fair portion of psychedelics. When nausea does appear, it's usually gone in 30 to 60 minutes. Jitteriness and restlessness are other potential responses during the initial part of the experience. Once you enter the full effects, the visual changes vary based on dose and user. Common doses provide noticeable and significant hallucinations like patterns, breathing, movement, and colors. There can also be patterns and other effects when you close your eyes, and the closed eye experience can let people enter an internal world where they feel physically comfortable, relaxed, and dissociated from their setting. However, there are some people who mainly receive a mood or bodily effect at those doses, not a visual response. When you reach stronger doses, it can be a pretty intense drug in terms of visual hallucinations. The substance isn't very confusing or forceful. This can be a nice quality, but the flip side is that it may be less likely to offer insightful and creative thinking. For some users, a significantly altered mental state is a key part of the psychedelic experience. When that's not present, the experience might be boring, even if it's actually preferable for other users. At common doses, you normally won't lose your ability to communicate. The chance of entering a psychotic or really confused mental state is also pretty low. It can therefore be viewed as a clear-headed psychedelic, but that's not to say paranoia, delusional thinking, or panic attacks can't happen. Some people dislike its short duration, but an upside of that duration is that bad experiences should subside within a few hours. The fact that it's not very forceful could mean it's less interesting, but it's a positive if you don't want the drug to take over your thinking, such that it's difficult for you to bring yourself out of a negative place. Even though people don't consider it as intense, it has the capacity to yield insightful mental states and strong visual effects, which are dose-dependent. It can be easier to explore personal or spiritual topics with a minimal anxiety and confusion. It also has the potential to facilitate open communication, whether that's with friends, a partner, or someone else. There are some pro-social and caring effects that contribute to an appreciative mental state. In this sense, especially when it's combined with mental and physical euphoria, 2C-C could be called entactogenic. Erotic thinking is sometimes encountered, and it can even be paired with an enhancement of sex. This stems from a combination of its mental effects and tactile enhancement, which can make everything from sex to a shower more enticing. Yet it's still more common for people to simply feel closer to their friends or partner in a non-sexual way. Another effect that's been noted by some users is an increase in laughter or an enhancement of humor. The body high of 2C-C is normally pleasant, with common elements being warmth, buzzing, and fuzziness, but negatives, like tension or an unpleasant sensation of energy in the body, can occur. Coordination is often impaired in a sedative-like way. Your limbs can feel heavy, though lightness or floatiness are also common when moving. A minority of users have uncomfortable periods of hot flashes or cold sensations, as if their temperature is fluctuating, and some portion also get a headache during or after the experience. Orally, it lasts 4 to 6 hours and has an onset of 30 to 90 minutes. It lasts 3 to 5 hours intranasally with a 10 to 20 minute onset. A lot of users report some changes within 30 to 45 minutes when it's administered orally, but it can take up to an hour and a half, occasionally longer, for the psychedelic effects to really begin. After the drug wears off, it doesn't keep people awake very long. Sleep is possible within a few hours, and people feel sober pretty fast. By the next day, you're usually normal, with the exception of potential changes in mood, both positive and negative. 2C-C is a substituted phenethylamine and a member of the 2CX series, meaning it has a methoxy group at both the 2 and 5 positions, and another substitution at the 4 position. In the case of 2C-C, the substituent at the 4 position is a chlorine atom. The amphetamine counterpart of 2C-C is DOC. Research has confirmed it functions as an agonist at serotonin receptors and binds to 5-HT1A, 2A, and 2C. Its affinity for non-serotonin receptors and for monoamine transporters is generally a lot lower, so it appears to primarily be a serotonin receptor agonist. 5-HT2A activity is probably a key source of its psychedelic effects. Orally, a light dose is 20 to 30 milligrams, a common dose is 30 to 50 milligrams, and a strong dose is 50 to 70 milligrams. Intranasally, a light dose is 5 to 15 milligrams, a common dose is 15 to 25 milligrams, and a strong dose is over 25 milligrams. Most people find 30 to 50 milligrams orally delivers an adequate experience. There are minorities who either get a lot of activity from just 20 to 30 milligrams or who require strong doses for worthwhile psychedelic effects. Some of those who need high oral doses are able to use common intranasal or rectal doses. And even for the same user, there can be a variation in dose sensitivity between experiences, which might be reduced with intranasal and rectal use. I think it's wise to start with a light dose so that you have an idea of your sensitivity. Then you can move to progressively higher doses. Its synthesis was first reported in 1983, but it wasn't thoroughly studied. Alexander Shulgin then reported its synthesis and described its effects in 1991. Users have posted experience reports online since at least the early 2000s, and they've increased over time. In July 2012, it was added to Schedule 1 in the US, alongside some other 2CX drugs. It remains available as a research chemical that's almost exclusively purchased online and is pretty uncommon. 2C-C is Schedule 1 in the US. In Australia, it's illegal due to a blanket ban covering all 2CX drugs and other methoxyphenethylamines. It's Schedule 3 in Canada and Class A in the UK. Since it's a research chemical with an unknown safety profile, you should use the drug infrequently, at common doses, and without combinations. Some of the psychological risks include confusion, anxiety, panic attacks, and psychosis, while the physical risks include increased cardiovascular stress and a lower seizure threshold. It's not a good idea to use the drug if you have a cardiovascular disorder, epilepsy, or a mental health condition. Some of the risky combinations include other psychedelics, stimulants, and tramadol. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments. The Drug Classroom is only funded by donations. This content is possible due to listener support. If you want to support, you can do so through Patreon, PayPal, or Bitcoin.